going on, everybody out there? Welcome to the Bake Sale episode 7. I am your co-host, Moods, and of course I've got the homeboy, Jason, up in the house tonight. What's going on, Jay?
So I've upgraded to co-host at this point? Is that what's happening?
Yeah, I don't know why I never said that, because it's like there's two people. Why would you have a host? Like, wouldn't it just be co-hosting?
It's on your channel. You host it, so I mean,
guess.
Whatever.
I guess if you look at it like that, but I think it sounds a little better to say co-host, right? We're both the stars.
I'll take it.
We're both the stars of the show. Let's face it here, okay? Yeah. All right. So episode 7 is finally happening. Actually, this was an album that we were going to review, I think, a long time ago, and
yeah, probably about a year ago.
Yeah, and it just never happened due to scheduling. You know how life shit happens. But then we're like, what do you want to do after we did the last episode? And we're like, well, shit, man, we might as well do the Jungle Brothers done by the Forces of Nature album. So like, well, it doesn't really take a whole lot of prep. Listen to the album millions of times.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So yeah, man. So what's cooking these days, man? Since I guess about a week ago. Really?
Yeah. That was 2 weeks ago. Yeah.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. Oh man, it's baseball leave. We're getting ready to kick off a new season. Your Jays could be looking pretty good.
Ooh, man, I'm so excited for Friday opening day. It's not the Jays aren't at home, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I'm really excited for this season. Did some pretty decent upgrades defensively, hopefully offensively too. Offense is not really the issue, but it's going to be interesting. It'll be an interesting season. I'm just hoping the pitching stays healthy. Because I know the offense will be there, and that's always the problem, man. Our ass end of our bullpen, that was the biggest downfall for us last year, man. Biggest problem, man.
The Sox bullpen this year is trash. So, I mean, the starting pitching's not looking super great either. But I doubted them last season, and they end up doing pretty well. So we'll see what happens. Dude, they need to get Devers extended, though, man. That's crazy. They haven't got him signed yet. Right.
Yeah, that'll be a tragedy if they let him go, man. Because he's kind of like
he rejected their offer earlier today. So
oh shit.
I mean, yeah.
He wants to go link up with Betts again.
Wouldn't surprise me, man. The Dodgers just suck up everybody.
They do, man. So they're the National League Yankees, man. That's what they do. Yep. Big contracts, man. Big contracts. Yeah, it'll be an interesting season to say the least. Yeah, because you're right, man. The Red Sox last year were not. It wasn't supposed to be a great season for them, but they overachieved big time. Like that's just the will of the way, man. It's crazy. So.
Yep.
But yeah. Cool, man. So yes, for episode 7, man, we're gonna take it back to the glorious year of 1989. I was all of 9 years old when this album came out.
Yeah.
But
did you hear this or get this when it initially came out?
No, the first time I heard this album was probably in 1990, and that was because of one of my best friends. My best friend's brother was 3 years older, so we always had the in on things. Like he was just far enough in age that we never hung out, but he was close enough that we would still like kind of latch on to him a little bit, and so we always had the heads up on everything. So like us being so young, we always had the ability to check this. We were always kind of exposed to it. So it was kind of nice. So I'm thinking it must have been shortly around there because he was a really big hip hop head and he was really big into, this type of stuff, like the beginning of Native Tongues and shit. And like he was, everybody knows out there, Tribe Called Quest, my favorite group. And I was introduced to Tribe pretty much through him, like about the time Tribe came out in like 1990 and stuff, and from these tracks and stuff. But yeah, man, like, it was probably about that time, and I love this stuff, man. It was just so like this album in particular. I believe I heard this album before I heard Jungle Brothers' first album. I want to say
I did as well.
I'm not 100% sure, but I want to go out on a limb and say I heard this one before their first record, and I don't know if that's the reason why I prefer this album to the first one. And it's not to say anything about like the first Jungle Brothers album is very groundbreaking. It's very, very unique for the time, 1988, and introduced a lot of different sounds. It was the start of Native Tongues, and there's a lot of accolades with the Jungle Brothers, which is kind of ironic a little bit because when you think of Native Tongues, who's the first people you think of?
Oh, Tribe and De La first,
right? But, and it's funny.
I mean, that's I actually heard them before this album. Like I was really into Tribe when I was a little kid, and it was because of Rap City. Like they used to play Straight Out the Jungle video a lot on
Right,
there,
right.
and I was like, this is cool, but I didn't know who the Jungle Brothers were.
Yeah.
And then they started playing more videos off of this album, and then I started getting into them. I was like, oh, okay. I was like, oh, damn, they actually came out before Tribe, but I didn't know that when I was a kid at all. Like I had no clue that they came out first.
Yeah, I mean, it was 1988. Jungle Brothers came out, and then 89 was kind of, that's when De La Soul dropped their first record too. And this album came out too, so it was kind of getting into it. And Q-Tip and it was mostly Q-Tip really. I think Jerobi had some background vocals on these records, and they were kind of featured here and there and stuff. But Tip wasn't a household name at all. And then 1990 came, and Tribe's first album came out, and it was like, boom, game over. Native Tongues were a household kind of thing. So,
yeah,
but
yeah, I mean, if you listen to Straight Out the Jungle that came out in '88, and then this came out in '89,
yeah,
it's like musically, this is like many levels above Straight Out the Jungle, in my opinion. Like this seems like it's way ahead of its time musically.
I totally agree with you on that, because this album right here is like a fusion of like, it's got everything, man. It's got like jazz, blues, funk. Like, I mean, this honestly was the first time I ever remember hearing what I refer to as gangster whine. Like the West Coast kind of synth gangster, and that's a sample. And but like it was weird because this album, when you go back and listen to it all these years later, you wouldn't appreciate it at the time, like 88 and 89, because the West Coast wasn't really the West Coast sound at that time. But when you go back and listen to this album, it's really like East Coast, West Coast. It's got that house influence. It's got those party tracks that are house, jazz, blues, funk. It really does. It was an explosion of genres mixed together that, oddly enough, really worked. And the Jungle Brothers have always been into house music and stuff. If you look at the first record, Welcome to the Jungle, Straight Out the Jungle, Welcome to the Jungle. Right, Welcome to the Jungle with Axl Rose, yeah. I kind of missed that remix.
Axl freestyling.
Axl freestyling, right? But Straight Out the Jungle was, they had Housing, which I believe was not on the original release, right?
Oh, wasn't it?
I think it was actually it was put on the re-release. It might have been released as a single, but it wasn't on the original release of the record. It's kind of like the promo. If you get the re-released album, I think the promo is like a bonus track on there, and that's actually got early Q-Tip on there from 1988.
Yeah.
Right? But it wasn't initially on the record, and I think if it had been Q-Tip, probably would have been a little bit more. His name probably would have got out there a little bit more. Whoa, bouncing around, and. But yeah, I don't know, man. The house tracks, like I was never really huge into house music.
Yeah.
So when I hear those beats, and I don't know what it is, man, about Jungle Brothers, but they really kind of do it properly. Like there's a couple beats on this record, and actually back-to-back tracks. They're very much club kind of party tracks, but they're not like the club tracks of today. They're still funky and groovy, and they're still kind of catchy and stuff. But it really relies on the funk and things like that, and kind of like the house drums and things like that. But they oddly work. It's so strange. Like you'd probably be very critical of an album today, or if you had this like real boom bap track and then you had like this house track next to it, you'd be like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah.
Like Jungle Brothers made shit work somehow.
Yeah, and as far as like diverse as the musical part is, like the lyrics are the same way. It's like they're all over the place. They're just like party tracks. They're giving lessons about history. They're all sorts of different subjects in this one album. And I find a lot of older albums are like that, and they don't seem to be that way anymore. It's more one direction, whereas this is all over the place.
Yeah, I think you're right, dude. Because there's a lot of. I don't want to say it's a lack of diversity. I think it's more of. I don't want to say one way street either. But in a sense, a lot of people like to do concept records, it seems like now. They want to take a concept and they want to roll with that through a whole record. I think it might just be a little bit easier to write from that. If you take a concept and you use it and utilize a theme and you write it, right? Like I always think of like Mr. Lift's record, there's a million concept records out there. But there's a lot of records where kind of written from this perspective. And I think for a writer, it's probably a lot easier to just dive right into like one concept than it is to like focus on certain things, because when you focus on different concepts and themes and stuff like that, as an artist, as a musician, you're also putting different types of beats to those moods and those ideas too. So the album could be all over the place.
Yeah.
And it's funny because it works back in these days, oddly enough, because like you just don't you don't hear albums like this anymore that have these like real standout like house tracks next to like a real funky groovy, you know, like almost like jazz beat and stuff. It's really crazy, the infusion that does oddly work, but Jungle Brothers, they pulled that off, man. But yeah, they're concept records these days, man. It's just what it is. I mean,
yeah, that's true. I never actually thought about the concept portion, but yeah, you're right. That does happen a lot nowadays.
It really does. Yeah. Like guys like Husk Kingpin and those guys always seem to be rolling with a theme. Like they take a concept and they just they do the 10 tracks and that's what it is. You know, to be honest though, like there's a lot of MCs out today that are trying this a lot more, but it does get a little bit repetitive and a little bit monotonous lyrically, because there is quite a few guys in the game right now that are big time names. But you know, I mean, if you were to put, you know, like even Benny's discography into a big playlist and played it on random, like could you off the top you just name what track was off which EP and album and stuff?
Yeah, probably not.
Because lyrically, and I'm not saying that Benny's like, I like Benny, but like if you listen to Benny for like 4 straight records, the beat changed. Yeah. The beat changed. Yeah. Nothing else changed.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, yeah, but it is what it is. I mean, it's a lot of MCs like that these days, and so you got to take it back to 1989, man. Got to take it back.
Yeah, every once in a while, you just step back in history. And just listening to this, because obviously both of us listened to it when we were younger as well, like, it takes you back to that time. And I remember specifically, like, just riding in the back of my parents' car listening to it on my Walkman, right? It's like, it just takes you back to moments like that when you're a kid that other music can't do, obviously, because you don't have that connection with it.
Yeah, man. You're right though. Like back in the day, you remember specifically how you were listening to it, whether you were putting on a record or if you were popping in that tape in your house stereo or your Walkman or even in your Discman or your house. Like you just remember those things like quite clearly. And I do remember when I actually don't have the tape for this anymore. It's one of the ones that never survived the days of the 90s. But
I still have mine.
Yeah, I actually don't. At least I don't think I do. I don't know. I'd have to go. I'm pretty sure I don't. But I remember this tape specifically because the last song on the first side is the instrumental, kind of like house African. It's just it's a melody of genres in there, but it's very African influence with these like house drums and like it's incredibly odd. But I always remember that because it was like, you know, the first half of the tape would end and then it would get into the second half. But I always remember that instrumental track being the end of side one, you know? Yeah. So it's those little anecdotes and those little kind of things that you just can't forget. You just can't forget.
Yeah, and I think back then as well, like they did think about things like that, about being on cassettes and flipping it over, and you know, it's like we'll put this here. So it's like they kind of designed it that way, which is cool.
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree with that. But yeah, no, like the Jungle Brothers, man, and you know the whole Native Tongues clique, man, is it's just such a special time. You know, I've always said, and I've said this many times over the years, that there was about a 4 or 5 year span, like probably between like 88 and about 93, where I think everybody that was into Native Tongues was like, where's the album? Right? Like, could you imagine the Jungle Brothers, Tribe Called Quest, De La Soul, and I mean, even, you know, with Black Sheep and, you know, even Chi Ali before he got put away forever, and, you know, just the core members. I mean, you know, the Beatnuts were there too. I think they were always kind of considered like a secondary, like Brand Nubian, and there was a lot of people, like even Dilla. Like, there's a lot of people that were kind of considered, but not really. But like the core members of Native Tongues, I think it's one of the biggest shames in history, in hip hop history, that a Native Tongues album just never was done.
Yeah, that would have been crazy.
You know, and it's interesting too because, I remember thinking about this a few years back, and I was going to do a video about Native Tongues, just do my top like Native Tongue records or whatever. I ended up not doing the video, but I was kind of thinking about it, and I was like, it's kind of strange that like the Jungle Brothers really introduced Tip into the game, but they never appeared on a Tribe Called Quest record.
Yeah, that is strange, isn't it?
Isn't it strange?
Yeah.
Because they were on Buddy, which was on De La Soul.
Yeah.
Right? But that was kind of the, that was a posse cut, and there's a posse cut here and stuff on the...
Yeah.
But, like, Tribe Called Quest, when they did their posse cuts, they, like, Scenario or something like that. There was no Africa, there was no Baby Bam on there, and there was no Mike G. And, like, I always thought it was really interesting, and I bet you there's a story there as to why they were never on a Tribe Called Quest record, and or why it never really, the Native Tongues movement, if you want to call it, or the whole coalition or whatever you want to call it, the whole it didn't last that long.
Yeah.
So there has to have been some issues there and stuff. I know, like Queen Latifah.
Yeah, I've never heard any stories about that. Like I've seen interviews with Jungle Brothers, and they talk about and how they went to school together and everything, and how things started happening. But I never heard them really address any situation like that at all.
It's funny. There's got to be something out there. There's got to be some kind of explanation as to why they were never on a Tribe album, which is interesting, and or why there wasn't more of the Native Tongue songs together. Because like Tribe really, let's face it, Tribe's first album is mostly Tip. Fife only has about 5 verses on the whole record, but that's Fife puts that on himself too. He wasn't in the mindset to doing it. But then come the second record, you got Scenario, and that's where they were like leaders of New School and shit like that. It was kind of different. They kind of went and did their own thing, and it's interesting. It is really interesting. But man, could you imagine?
Yeah, that would have been insane if all those guys had got together and actually did a whole album.
Right.
It's kind of sad. Kind of sad that it is now that I'm thinking about it. It's like, damn, it's crazy. It never happened.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, it's such a shame, man, because like I also was a massive, like Souls of Mischief fan, and Dell, the whole hieroglyphics movement, and then they actually did the Hyro record back in like 1999, and they did it, and it was really good too. And it was like, even thinking back then, I'm like, why wasn't this a Native Tongues album, man? Like this would have been crazy, man, crazy shit.
Yeah, I thought about that before, but I haven't thought about that for so long, and it's like now I'm just like getting kind of sad that it never happened. Right,
and it just could have been so like but like honestly though, Native Tongues, that would have been Clash of the Egos.
Yeah,
because you gotta face it, man. Like Jungle Brothers were kind of like the daddies of it, right? And then you got all these other guys, but everybody was so good at what they did. Like, it would have been interesting to see how the production and how it actually went down in the studio, because, holy man.
Yeah.
Right?
Maybe that's why it didn't happen. That might be why it never happened. Maybe they foreseen that it was just going to be a problem if they all tried to work this out together. Because they did enough posse tracks together like with other members that maybe they just realized it wasn't meant to be.
Yeah, and I've heard stories about Tip being a little bit hard to work with back in the day. He's kind of like, he's a super perfectionist, which I understand, from an artist standpoint and stuff, but like, like you're doing it your way. And I think it's just a lot easier because that's what he did. He kind of handled the production, Tribe Records, and just kind of did his own thing. And it kind of makes sense, He didn't want to break a formula after the first record and stuff, but.
Yeah. I guess we'll never know what happened unless somebody actually addresses it. But
yeah, man, if somebody out there actually knows anything about it, I probably could have done a quick Google on it. I just kind of thought about it right now. But I'm sure there's got to be some type of story. Like, there always is some type of weird story. Like, something minor must have happened. They're just like, fuck it, man. We're just going to do our own thing. But it was like the Native Tongue was like here, and then it wasn't. And everybody was just off doing their own thing with other people and stuff. And it was just such a quick... they don't even really consider it a movement, It was like the Daisy Age for like a couple years, and then it was like, boom, it's over. It's like, the fuck happened? Like, by the time like 93 hit, it was like, and it is kind of interesting though too, because when you actually think about the discographies, Jungle Brothers dropped an album in 88 and 89, and then they took 4 years off and didn't drop their third LP until 93, and Tribe was dropping their third album in like basically 3 years, right? And and De La Soul dropped a couple, but and they were on I think their third album 93 too. But so I don't know, maybe it had something to do with the JBs kind of stepped away for a little bit, because 4 years in hip hop is just it's ginormous given the time period. Because let's go back to the first thing that we talked about, the sound on the Jungle Brothers first album in 88 to the sound in 89, but hip hop was changing so at rapid pace in those days. And like, you think about it, from 89 to 93, how many sound changes were in there? Like, you have that 90 sound to like 92, 90, like everything was changing so drastically. Like 4 years at that time was insane. Yeah. Like, just crazy difference. So maybe, I don't know, maybe they just felt like they waited out, oh, we like this sound, so we're going to kind of do this. Because Jungle Brothers, let's face it, when they came back, sounded a lot different.
Oh, yeah.
Like, a lot
definitely.
different. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, let's just get into the opening track, Beyond This World.
Yeah,
man. When this comes in.
Actually, you know what I want to do here? Let's play a little game here. So, probably should have mentioned this before we even started, but you can just kind of figure it out. So I thought, instead of, how we we'll still give our top 3 tracks at the end of this.
Okay.
But I want you to try and pick mine, and I'll try to pick yours.
Oh.
So we'll just play an honor system. So we'll give our list, and then you just be like, oh, well, I had this, and this. So I wrote down 3, but I honestly was like trying to figure this out. And I'm going, I have no idea. Like, I have no idea what you're talking. Like, they could.
I always think we're gonna have the same tracks, but then we never do.
That's what I'm saying. I'm like, okay. So that was my mentality with this too. I'm like, well, if my 3 tracks are these, his must not be these. So, but then I'm like, one of these tracks I can totally see being on Jay's list, but maybe not this one. I'm like, I always get confused, dude. I always get confused. But you know what? You can figure it out as we go along. Maybe we'll just kind of give shit away when we're talking. But I already have yours written down. So maybe if I feel like I need to change, but I feel like I might be there. I don't know. You might surprise me and be like, I don't know. We'll see. So
yeah, I mean, 2 of the top 3 that I have, like I don't want to say anything because that'll kind of give it away. But anyway, Beyond This World, the opener to the album.
Is this not the first single?
Maybe it was.
I just want to check something out. I think that this is.
I remember, like, the track that I remember all the time on Rap City is What You Waiting For. Like, they used to play that constantly just because it's kind of, the party track, upbeat track.
Right.
But
right.
I don't recall them ever playing Beyond This World on Rap City, but in those days, that's basically where I knew what was a single on an album. So I'm not sure. I know there is a video for it though. I saw it on YouTube before. But...
Right. So, okay. So let me see. So Beyond This World was actually the first single. So the singles off the record were actually Beyond This World, What You Waiting For, which is an interesting second choice if these are in order, and then Do Our Own Dang was the third single, which which kind of made sense in those days to, like, maybe drop like your third or fourth single as like a posse cut. I think De La Soul did that too, like with Buddy. I don't think Buddy was like, Buddy might have been like the fifth, because they had like 6 singles off that 3 Feet High and Rising.
I think that was the last single, wasn't it, Buddy?
Yeah, and they had like 6 singles or something. It's just a massacre of singles off that record. It's just fucking nuts how many they had. Yeah. So the first track.
So what are your thoughts on this opener?
I love this track, man. I think it's like a totally great opening track. Like, I don't know what it is with every album that we've been reviewing that it doesn't actually have like an intro, but it's like a song intro that totally sets the stage and the bar.
Kind of like there's like 10 seconds at the beginning. It is kind of like an intro, to the song, and it's like it just kicks in. Man, but this is a crazy track, man. It's like the sound is so frantic at points. There's so much going on. It's like musically, it's different than anything I had heard at that point. Right.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, man, there's the opening lyrics from Baby Bam. I should say Africa Baby Bambaataa. Okay. Here's an interesting thought that I was thinking about when I was listening to the album earlier today. So it actually kind of made me laugh, and I was like, shit, should I bring this up? Because I don't really like talking about this, but so for the people out there that probably know the connection and how Africa Baby Bam got his name, it's like a tribute to Africa Bambaataa. And I'm wondering what his, like, having that name almost the same as Bambaataa and with all the issues that he's been going through these days, like, he's been accused of some pretty heinous shit, man. And like, it's been kind of like, people don't really talk about it in the hip hop community anymore, man. It was
that's where I thought this was going, but
and like, I just thought it was interesting because if you talk to Baby Bam today, like honestly, I would feel like, I don't know if I want this name anymore.
Yeah.
Like, because it's very similar. Like, it's Baby Bam. It's Baby Bambaataa.
Yeah, I think they just call him Africa most of the time now, don't they?
I would assume, but like, just having that attachment, like, I don't know. I just thought that was kind of an interesting anecdote to add to it, but yes, the first verse in the song, man, when he's like, round and round, upside down, live my life underground. Oh man, dude, underneath the ground. I absolutely love, like, that shit was stuck in, when I was a kid, I used to walk around saying that over and over again. It was just so damn catchy. I'm like, that is the catchiest shit. And it literally, from the first 2 lines, just sets the bar on this album. And you're just like, oh man, this is amazing. It's so funky. It's so unique sounding and way ahead of its time for 1989. If you actually brought up the albums from 1989 and some of the sounds and shit, like, this album is light years ahead.
Oh yeah, that's what I was saying earlier, man. It's like it's on another level than anything at that point in time, I think. Like,
right.
And it's funny you mentioned that. There's one lyric, like, it doesn't matter if this song is on like in the background. I could be doing anything and it's just on in the background. When they say "came through in stereo," like I hear that and I say it every time. Like, it doesn't matter what's happening. There could be goddamn fireworks going off, bombs going off. And if that song's on, I'll be like, came through in stereo every time.
Right,
it's hilarious, man. It's just burned into my brain.
So I was listening to the album again today, and I was kind of like on the IMDb, or I was on the Wikipedia page, and I was just kind of reading on shit, and I thought it was really interesting. Like, this album gets a lot of accolades that I didn't realize, man. Like, it's literally in that book, in the 1001 albums you must hear before you die. And I'm just thinking, I'm like, holy shit, man. And like, it was in the Source's top 100 best rap albums of all time. I think it was in Rolling Stone. It was like number 37 on some 50 list. And I was like, holy shit, dude. Like, that's really crazy because, you know, when you really think about it, this album is critically acclaimed. But again, when it comes to Native Tongues, the Jungle Brothers always get overshadowed by De La Soul and Tribe Called Quest. Yeah, it's crazy.
That's the thing. I was thinking that as well. Like, you can't say the album is underrated because, as far as people rating it, it's rated pretty well. But it's just underappreciated or underknown. Like, it's not that well known, basically.
Right. Like, it literally has, you know, you look at the ratings by all these different type of sources, whether they're credible or not. You know, rating systems, I always say ratings are for dummies anyways. It's just a form of giving it something to be like, oh, it got 5 stars. Yeah. But you know what I'm saying? But if you look at everybody that's involved, whatever, it's all relatively the same rating of like 9s to 10s. And it really did hold the test of time. And again, you know, like, you talk about these classic albums and shit like that. And it's funny that Jungle Brothers kind of get overshadowed in the hip hop community and just in the realm of like these timeless albums and shit. But critically, it's very well respected. It's really interesting. It's got to be one of the only albums that I can think of that's kind of in that state. Like, you couldn't say, I mean, Illmatic is critically acclaimed, but it's also very well respected in the hip hop community and hip hop heads and stuff, right? And there's
everybody knows that.
That's the thing, right? But you talk to, like, you know, even some of the bigger ones like Jungle Brothers, Done by the Force, like, what? Probably not.
No, not at all.
It's a strange conversation, and it just kind of got me thinking about, like, wow, like, this is really one of those albums that, like, people could still be discovering, going, this came out in 89? This is incredible. It's incredible.
Yep.
Yeah, so
it is.
Yeah, man. And I like it too because, you know, Bam goes on to say, like, never heard of and hardly seen a whole lot of talk about the red, black, and green. And, you know, that's literally what the Native Tongues movement was about the red, black, and green. Like, they literally wore that shit on their sleeves. Right? Yeah. Look at Tribe's, you know, mascot or, you know, logo or whatever you want to call it. Yeah. It's the colors of, you know, what it is, right? And it's just, you know, red standing for blood and black for the person and green for the land, for the native land, right?
And that's another thing as well. Like, growing up, like, I wasn't learning about any of this shit in school. Like, nobody's teaching this in history class or any type of classes. So this kind of is like a teaching me to learning different things and what's going on, like why are they saying red, black, and green? Like, I didn't know at that point, right? I'm just a kid. I don't know shit. I'm in rural Nova Scotia growing up. So
right.
I don't hear about any of this stuff except for in the music that I'm listening to. So
well,
that
it honestly, it didn't matter that you were on the far East Coast and I was on the far West Coast. We were not learning about this shit because either was American students. They talk about that in this album. About like, that's why they have, you know, they literally have a whole song dedicated to it. You know, and like, acknowledge your own history. And it talks about how, you know, black people are portrayed in the media, and, you know, like, you only ever hear of things that were going on, whether it's like rape, robbery, or murder, or something negative that you can associate with a black man or the black culture, right? They weren't teaching people. I mean, and if you did learn something about Africa, it was about people with bones in their noses and shit, and they bring that up, right? And it's like, it's not true. So the song is basically saying, you know, it's like, you need to know yourself and your history. Don't accept what you're seeing in this fake reality because you're just learning all the wrong shit. There actually there's a lot of positivity here, and you know, we're fucking strong people over here and shit, and what you see on here is not necessarily the realism of reality, right? Yeah. And I like that because they set it up in this song and then they dedicate a whole fucking song to it. And it's crazy because you're absolutely 100% right, because this is how I learned about shit too. Literally.
Yeah.
Like, it's so crazy.
I'm sure when they were making it, they had no idea that two white kids, like in Canada, on the opposite coast, would be listening to this and learning, where there's more speaking to you know, black youth, not white guys, right? So right. Yeah, it's interesting though, because I did learn a lot from this album and a lot of other music that I listened to growing up as well, and that's the only way I would have learned these things. So it's not through school at all.
Oh, absolutely. It is kind of crazy when you talk to certain artists and stuff, like bring up like Abstract Root again, and you know, when I was talking to him at an Atmosphere show, and he's like, where are you from? And I said, oh, I'm from BC. And just north of Vancouver kind of thing. He's like, oh yeah, because I know he knows where Vancouver is because he's been through Vancouver tons of times. Obviously, he used to be signed to Battle Axe, and he was up there doing shows all the time.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh yeah, he's like, that's cool. And then we just kind of got talking, and he's like, the knowledge, dude. He's like, how do you know all this stuff? And I'm like, man, he's like, he was so confused that he was kind of assuming that we were probably just being introduced to this kind of thing, and like, he didn't really realize that it had been, you know, since the 80s, and like we followed along and we learned this stuff and we learned the history and stuff, and he's just like, what? Like, he's never had this conversation before with someone. He was like, what the hell? He's like, it's crazy. So I mean, but it goes back to like, you know, even KRS-One, you know, you got to teach it, man. You got to teach it properly, right? Without this type of stuff, you know, the ignorance, it's not even being really ignorant. It's just, I mean, when you're told false things and you're shown false things like you see on the news every fucking day, you tend to believe that shit. That's the problem. Right?
Yeah, it's like when you're a kid, of course, you like listening to, like, you know, NWA and Too Short and stuff, just because it's a lot of swearing, a lot of dirty stuff you don't get to hear on TV or whatever. Right. But then when you come across albums like this, it's like, oh, okay, there's another side to this, and I can actually learn things, not just giggle at stuff with my friends, you know. But
right.
Yeah, but open up a whole different world.
See, the NWA thing is really interesting too, because you got to remember, like, I remember I was listening or was watching Talib Kweli's podcast on YouTube, and I think he was talking to, I can't remember a conversation. It might have been the Ice Cube interview. I'm not 100% sure. It might have been the Ice Cube. I want to say it was. So he's having a conversation with Ice Cube, and he was like, you know, we didn't know what was going on in the West Coast. You guys were literally the reality. And you're like, what the fuck? Like, what the hell's a gang and shit? Like, the cops are doing this shit. Like, it was like a different world out there. So within the hip hop culture, within, you know, just in black culture in general, like, they just had no idea what was going on. Right. And so they were learning from it too. And I was like, I never really thought of that.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, because they were literally street preaching about the reality of what they were going through. And then people were listening going, you gotta be fucking kidding me. That's insane, dude. So, and then Talib Kweli, he's like, dude, he's like, if it wasn't free, like, we had no idea what was going down. Like, they didn't even know where Compton or something, like, they didn't know, they weren't even on the map yet. Nobody knew, right? They were small little towns. And I was like, shit, dude, that's, you know, like, you kind of have those same feelings when you listen to this stuff and you learn about things, you know, through the music back in the late 80s, early 90s. And you're like, holy fuck, like I'll be honest, like, you know, you learned where places were. My geography got really damn good. American geography.
Yeah.
But you get to learn a lot of things, you know, like, and that's why I was kind of gravitated towards like conscious and political hip hop back in the day with Public Enemy and stuff, and I was really infatuated with, you know, like the movements and the power, and it was just one of those things that I was like, damn, it's just crazy. Like, it's such a different world. Loved it. I loved learning about it. So, but
yeah, and even as a kid, like these are albums like that you could listen to around your parents. Like you wouldn't think a second about throwing this on or like a Tribe album. But it's like when it comes to the other stuff, you just listen to that with your friends, right? It's like, okay, you're not going to play this out. Just listen to the Walkman or with the friends. But
right.
it's kind of divides the music. It's like, okay, listen to this. This is like actually positive. Rap is positive. Like, listen to that.
Oh, I used to have those conversations with my mom too, and she's like, man, everything you listen to is fuck this and I'm like, nah, it actually really isn't. And it's funny too, like, parents are so funny back in the day, because you could be listening to an album, you could be 4 or 5 songs into it, and they finally curse once, and they're like, I told you, that's all they do is fucking swear. That's all they fucking do is swear. And I'm like, okay, this is what you heard. Fuck. Like it's just like they were magnetized to curse words, and I'm like, that's out of context, by the way. That's totally out of context. But yeah, you're right though. Like, you throw on all this stuff, man. It was very, very clean, very conscious, but I mean, at the same time, it was like our parents were so out of it. They're just like, it's not even music anyway. They're just talking. You know,
it was a lot different back then, man. Because like now, like kids now, like their parents have grown up listening to this stuff, and you know, so it's nothing like whatever.
Right.
But back then, it was like pretty abrasive. Like, so you hear these lyrics, like, what the hell is that? And you find out they're talking about gang shit and like all this crazy shit, and it's like, Jesus Christ, what do you listen to do?
But you know, like I remember saying to my mom one time, and I'm like, okay, so you know, these guys are like street teaching right now. You know, say I was referring to NWA. I'm like, what's the fucking difference of you watching the news? They're telling you all the bad shit that's going on in your neighborhood right now. There's no damn difference. And like, you're just like watching this white newscaster going, yeah, that's a shame. Crazy. Hey, Bernie, what's going on? You know, it's like, what the fuck, man? Like, it's the same shit, bro. Like, fucking hypocrites, man.
It's hard to explain something like that to parents back then, man. It's a different world, basically. So
yeah, and we were kind of like the first wave of it too, right? Because it was so new still that, and especially with like NWA kind of really put it in the forefront to like language, and you know, like that was a different breed of music in itself, right? So I'm not saying that there wasn't stuff before that, but not explicit and stuff like that. Like even Short Dog had records that were completely clean. You know, Too Short was doing clean stuff, right? So, but yeah, no, the first track, man, Beyond This World, it's an incredible track. It really is incredible. It's definitely an awesome song, man. Great beat. I gotta look at it's right. So they actually do sample Looking for the Perfect Beat in this track. Yeah. Africa Bambaataa. And they also sample Adventures of Super Rhymes by Jimmy Spicer. Rest in peace to Jimmy Spicer. Which I believe that do you actually know the song? Have you ever listened to it straight through? Because it's like 14 and a half minutes long, or 15 minutes. Yep. Dude, I used to have it on one of my old mixtapes. I'll never forget this, man. So I put it on a mixtape, and my buddy borrowed my tape, and he's like, bro, it's literally half the side of the mix. And I was like, because I think it was a 60-minute tape I'd made a mix on. It was literally half the side of the tape, right? Yeah. And he's like, what the this thing is so damn long. It was just like,
it's on forever.
Oh yeah, man. I loved it, man, because Jimmy Spicer doesn't get enough credit, man, because if you listen to that track straight through, like, this is like, what, 1980 or something, like 80, like, but the rhymes that he kicks on there, everybody ripped off, from the West Coast to the East Coast. Everybody tore Jimmy Spicer, and he never got credit for anything, man. Never got credit for anything. So, but yeah, anyways, pretty well known samples in this track. Oh yeah, that was actually the thing I wanted to talk to you about. I never really looked into it too much, but you know, the whole sampling thing that happened with De La Soul and shit. Like they basically made no money off their first like couple albums because they didn't clear the samples and shit. So I was thinking about that again today. And I was like, well, this Jungle Brothers album has a lot, like every song has a lot of samples from a lot of big known songs and or groups. And I'm wondering to myself, if they cleared all these samples, this album must have cost like $10 million. Like,
yeah, I thought about that before as well. It's like you said, there are a lot of samples in this album, and I don't know if it flew under the radar at that point, and it wasn't really that big of a deal, or nobody really cared or knew about it. But yeah, you're right, man. If they had to clear all those samples, like they would have been paying crazy money to do that back then.
See, what I'm thinking though is that this is right on the cusp. I think it's still in 1989. A lot of groups and or artists were just like still not claiming, but De La Soul did that. You know, they put out 3 Feet High and Rising, and then it wasn't until after that they kind of got shafted on a little bit. But I never heard anything about this record. And I'm looking at some of the samples on here, which, you know, we can definitely name because, you know, we're not sample policing right now because I mean they're clear as day. It's the internet. But if you do go into like even the CD in the credits, they're not there. So I'm thinking that they didn't clear them. Right.
Yeah, at that point it was just the Wild West for samples, and it wasn't a huge deal at that point.
Right. Because you see the appearances on here, and like I'm not really seeing.
Like the next track is Feeling Alright. Doesn't that have a cameo sample?
Yeah, I'll look at it. Yeah. But yeah, there's like in some incredibly huge R&B bands, metal bands. It's just truly incredible. I was going through the samples, like, and you recognize that, like, a lot of these samples were kind of just being used at this time, but then they got rehashed so often, right? But you got to remember, like, they were pretty damn new to at hip hop at this point. These type of samples.
Yeah, I assume that they just it wasn't known at that point, or this album wasn't huge enough to get anyone's attention at that time. Because, yeah, like you said, man, if they had to pay for this, it would have been a disaster for them.
Right. And, yeah, you're right, man. So the next song is called Feeling Alright, and it does actually have a cameo sample. It's the song Rigor Mortis.
Yeah.
Right. And I love me some cameo, too. I think I even have that album. Pretty sure I have it.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Nice.
So, yeah, Feeling Alright, man. Another really dope track.
Yeah, this track, it'll put you in a good mood because you're feeling all right like they are, you know? It's a good story. It's like, it's just a happy track. I love it.
It's self-explanatory. And that's one thing I like about the Jungle Brothers, man. Like, their song titles are just self-explanatory. It's literally what the songs are about. Like, there's no hidden messages. They're not writing in metaphors. We're not listening to Aesop Rock. We're not listening to Ill Conscious. You know, it's like everything, it just has a different meaning, and you really have to decipher it, right? Like, I mean, in Aesop Rocks, you almost have to have like, I don't know what you gotta do. You gotta do mathematics to figure out his shit, man.
Yeah.
But like this stuff, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing at all. It's lyrically simple, but it's so effective though. And I've tried to explain that to people that I've had conversations with. They're like, who do you think is the best lyricist of all time? And I'm like, this is why I don't deal with best of. This is why I like my favorites, because there is no rules to what the best is. People will say, oh, Nas or Rakim are the best lyricists. And I'm like, yeah, maybe. But what is the formula to being the best?
Yeah.
Right? Like there's no.
It's all opinions, right? It's like something will hit somebody differently, totally than me or you, right? It's like it's just there is no best.
No.
It's just your opinion, what you like the best.
Best is just subjective. Like you can't even be. You can kind of be objective if you start to break things down, but at the same time, when there's no set rules to something, how do you be objective about it? Because you can just have different arguments about every point that you make. But then that just becomes your objective conversation becomes subjective. Because it's your opinion.
And if you do try to break it down, even like how are you going to go from like Cool G Rap and Rakim, who were innovating styles, to Nas, who perfected the styles, to whoever, right? It's like, okay, are you going to give Nas more credit, or are you going to give the innovators more credit here? And this, what are you going to do? Just mark it all down and try to tally everything up? It's like,
that's the thing,
It just becomes a mess, really.
You know, from what I know about lyricism and even reading Rakim's book, too, where he literally breaks down, like the whole book is kind of the focus point of how he writes. and like getting into the mindset of how he writes and shit. And it's like, when you know that about him, you're like, you know, if there was set rules for the most, you know, the best rhymer rapper out, like you would, Rakim is like, this mindset is insane. And I'm not saying there's not other rappers out there that don't have that same mindset. You know, it's different, but you know, very, very focused, but he really dives into shit. It's really crazy how he writes. But again, you know, that's what I'm like, best and favorites, bro. It's like, I mean, technically, like, I don't know, when I listen to someone like Kool G Rap, dude, that shit blows my socks off. He was rhyming like nobody, like Rakim was, but when G Rap came out and he was like double and triple timing, so like he's just ridiculous on the mic. Great breath control. He was hard as fuck without being like NWA, you know, and it was just socks were like, shitter was blown the fuck out.
Yeah, like the shitter's blown.
Oh man, and I still listen to G Rap like it's going out of style, man, and it never will, because the guy is ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Man, one of my favorite YouTube videos is the one where Black Thought is breaking down Road to Riches, and you must have seen that, right?
Yep.
I watch that like all the time, like at least once a month since it came out. I'll watch it. It's just so hilarious. It's just so funny to me, sitting there just like rapping along. It's like and at the end he just gets up and walks out. He's like, oh man, it's too much, right?
Can't do this shit, right? And like, and you think about that, man, you're like, Black Thought can't rap like that. Like, nowadays people are like, Black Thought is the best rapper in the world, and he's like, he can't even fucking do G Rap, man.
Like, he's like, it's too much, man. It's like, and he took so much inspiration from that as well. It's so cool to watch.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, getting back to the track here. One line I like on here is, it always stuck with me. He's like, I got myself dressed off to work. I got there early. The boss is happy. Everything's just
right.
It's just so funny, man.
Right. Yeah,
so many funny things in here.
This song really is the epitome of feeling all right, though, man. You know, it's got a real uplifting beat, and the lyrics are just totally there, and it's fun, man. It's fun. You know, one thing about this record that, you know, they do a couple times on the album, not a whole lot though, and I've always loved what Run DMC did back in the days, you know, is the back and forth lines. I love when groups do that shit, man, when they go back and forth, like, you know, like
they do it really well. Like they perfect that, man. It's not doesn't feel forced or unnatural at all. It's perfect.
Right.
I even like the outro to this song. It's like, you know, the little singing, feeling all right, feeling all right. Yeah, it's a good fun song.
It is, man. It really is. Yeah, this song always tripped me out, man. When Mike G says, "Cool C recalls the crowd saying yeah," and like he's like, a powwow rocks a rhyme to Billy Square, big beat. Cool C recalls the crowd saying yeah. And I was like, is he talking about like the incarcerated Cool C? But it's actually not. It's another dude named Cool C, and he was apparently like an official, like an original member of the Native Tongues and stuff. But I don't know whatever happened to this Cool C.
Oh, okay.
Maybe he's in the same jail cell as the other Cool C. I don't know. but it's just kind of funny when guys are mentioned on records, and like, if you even look it up, like he's even mentioned as an original member of the Native Tongues. I'm like, who the fuck is Cool C?
I mean, I don't think I've heard his name other than in there, so I'm not sure.
Right, man. Yeah, it's kind of trippy.
Yeah, so we have a great start to the album with those first two tracks, and then we move on to Sunshine and WJBS Radio.
Right. Good old Sunshine, man. I mean, dude, you know, honestly, like, how many songs do you think, like, after even this one, like, I don't know how many songs were called Sunshine up to this point in hip-hop, but there's a lot of songs called Sunshine.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy.
I never really thought of that.
Like, there's so many. Like, you know, okay, what's the famous sample? I always forget who sings it, man. I'm so stupid sometimes.
On this?
It's not the...
You mean the chorus part?
Is it it's not by Alexander O'Neal, is it? Is that the original song? You know, like Naughty by Nature use it in their song Sunshine, and like so many people have sampled the song, and I can't think of what it is right now. I'm thinking maybe it might be that. I don't know. But I was looking at the samples on this track, and I was like, this is really trippy, man. They sampled the Simpsons theme, which Danny Elfman did. The song Sunshine by Alexander O'Neal, which it might be that track that I'm thinking of, and of course Flashlight by Parliament. So yeah, we get some pretty funky shit happening in this one.
Yeah, Yeah, the beat's pretty simple. You know, it has a lot of space. You know, mostly the drums in there. There's some vocal samples like you're mentioning. So
right,
well, lots of stuff in there.
Yeah, it's very appropriate that they would have this song right after, you know, Feeling All Right, because it's just it's more or less kind of the same type of thing. It's very positive. It's but at the same time, in a sense, it's kind of like a little bit of a metaphor. You know, sunshine. You know, to basically clean that fucking, you know, that dark shit away, kind of thing. So, yeah. But they don't go too in depth to it, which is fine. You know, but
yeah, I really did like the WJBS radio intro, and then they have a little break in there as well. I thought that was cool how they did that.
Right,
just a good idea.
Yeah, and then it's almost like De La Soul took that, you know, to the next level with De La Soul is Dead, and they kind of like, that's a huge concept album. It's like, you know, it's like a big radio show kind of thing, right? I always like that, man. It's like a lot of people always kind of criticize the record because they're like, man, there's like 150 tracks on it, but I'm like, but it's a concept record, man. You're supposed to play from top to bottom. It's not like you're pulling just songs out. Then they're kind of played out of context a little bit, right? So.
Yeah, I always love like the skits and everything in De La Soul is Dead. It's one of my favorite albums like that. It's just It's so fun. Like all the different skits, the radio stuff. It's just cool the way they put it all together.
It is cool because it all makes sense and it applies to like the concept that they're doing. And like, you ever hear albums where you're like, I don't understand why the skit's in here. And you're like, this is a perfect album. I'm gonna like throw on my iPod or something, get rid of all the fucking skippable shit, and then, you know, just play it through, you know, kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
But the De La Soul album, I think people kind of miss the point of it sometimes. Like, too many tracks, too many short shit on here, and I'm like, nah, it's kind of a cool concept, but yeah. So Sunshine. I mean, it's a dope track. I enjoy it. And then we get into What You Waiting For, which is the second single off the album, which is one of two back-to-back kind of like real kind of party. I would almost, you could play these tracks in the club. That's where it'd be played. I mean, it's got a very house feel to it. It's a very positive track, but it's I like how it's, to me, this song, like, they do the house thing and it's like a party club thing, but it's also like a homage song to like the early true school hip hop with like the way the MC, like the way they're you know, where they're kind of like, you know, getting the crowd participation in it and stuff like that. And I like that, man. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, it is definitely, like, as far as like a dancey fun track, it's one of the better ones, I think. And the video for this is a classic as well. It has like sort of like the spoof on Soul Train. So if you haven't ever seen the video, go check that out. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, I mean, these songs, man, I used to like, I think I used to get up on my couch and like jump around and shit. I'm like, man, this is, you know, it's just like a different feel, man. It's like, oh, this is really cool, man. So, but yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean, this used to be on, like I said earlier, they played this on Rhapsody on Much Music all the time, and I remember listening to this song like before going to school and stuff. I was like, oh, Mom, Jungle Brothers are on. I get away. Sweet.
right.
So, yeah.
It's
so
it's very memorable.
These albums, like we said, man, it just bring back a lot of memories. Just like little things like that. It's so funny.
Right. Yeah, because like, you know, you get that feeling when the song came on and you'd be like, listen, and you're like, you just knew right away that you had to get up and move. And my go-to is like to get on the couch and jump around. Like, this is way before fucking House of Pain was telling us to jump around. I'm jumping around to this shit, and it's like, you couldn't help it, man. It was so funky and catchy and shit, and you're just like, you just felt like they were talking to you when they were doing, like, you know, trying to get the crowd into it and shit, and you're just like, yeah, that's fucking amazing. I think I have the video somewhere, like on an old tape too. I used to record Rhapsody like it was going out of style, man.
Oh,
like,
yeah, I did too. I had a whole bunch of VHS tapes full of Rhapsody.
I actually I should go through them to see what ones are still there, because I'm pretty sure a lot of it is probably from, I want to say like 92 to like probably 96 era. I would say I think those are the ones that survive. I think a lot of probably maybe the earlier ones were probably recorded over, but I do have like, there's like 10 or 12 volumes of like 8 hours of videos still like from then. I used to go crazy, man.
Yeah, I don't have any of my VHS tapes anymore. I tossed them all years ago, but I wish I did, because I have a friend of mine who does conversions of that shit.
Oh,
So
right.
he could have converted it all onto like a flash drive or whatever for me. But
Right.
yeah, I tossed all that stuff a long time ago.
Right. So yeah, so what you waiting for? And then they follow it up with, this just completely makes sense, with You Make Me Sweat. And so this is like a straight funk track, man. It's like straight funk, dude. Okay, so I was racking my brain earlier, and I'm like, who fucking used this chorus? It's in the 90s. Somebody used this, but changed around the words and did something with it. I'm like, what? Like, I have the album. I can't figure out who did it. Maybe they sampled the same track, but they interpreted the chorus too. Like the way the way the chorus is like, you make me sweat, you make me work, you make my body, you make me go and jerk. Like somebody does this in the later 90s, and I kept wanting to say it was like Puff Daddy or Jay-Z interpreted it or something, and I'm like, I could not figure it out for the life of me, man. But
yeah, I'm not sure who did that.
I don't know. Somebody did it, man. Somebody did it.
It has the Zap sample. It's like pretty well known sample. So
yeah. Well, honestly, man, that was like, this is one of those tracks that just feels super West Coast, because Roger and Zap samples became the norm in the West Coast. Like that was just a big thing, man. Like DJ Pooh, like all those guys were just sampling the shit out of those guys. It was just a huge thing, right?
Yeah.
But I really like how they incorporate the Dougie Fresh, Slick Rick sample in there.
Yeah,
man. It's fucking dope, man.
Yeah.
And then of course, man, like this track right here would be so crazy to clear, man. Like you got the Zap sample, Dougie Fresh, the Slick Rick, La Di Da, and then you got Last Night and DJ Saved My Life. Yeah, and then I'm Caught Up by Inner Light. Like those are some big fucking songs, man. Like, it's just ridiculous, dude. It's crazy. I think it's actually kind of funny that, doesn't Q-Tip have a credit on this? And he just does background ad-libs, I think.
Yeah.
It's pretty funny.
Yep. Yeah, this is a fun song. It's like kind of funny, you know, the lyrics in it. It's talking about crazy shit the ladies make you do. So
right. Yeah, definitely. I mean, lyrically makes complete sense for the song. So. But then, you know, okay, so the next track, Acknowledge Your Own History, they really kind of
that's the one you were mentioning earlier there.
Yeah, they really do turn the page in the history, you know, in the book. Like, they really do. So we go from a couple party tracks, you know, they're talking about girls and stuff. It's probably the closest you're going to get to some sex tracks, really, from Jungle Brothers. But then they get serious with Acknowledge Your Own History, and, like, we were talking about what they're talking about and stuff, and, it's just kind of an interesting kind of flipping the script in the record, and you know, sometimes these things don't really work from like a musical standpoint, but it still kind of fits in so well. And it's just, I don't know, man, how they do it, man, because you go from like a big party track to something like super serious, and it just really does work, man. Another great beat, though.
Yeah,
really great beat.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it is a big contrast from the previous couple tracks, but you know, like you said, it is kind of like changing the pace of the album, opening up a different subject. They got you with the dance beats and stuff. Now you're listening, and then you can take this in, right? It's like telling, you know, they're just dropping knowledge on everybody. It's like letting you know you don't know who you are, things of that nature. So
right, and that's a good point, man. That's a really good point, because you know, they caught you with the dance tracks, the party tracks. It got you listening. You weren't just hearing them; you were actually listening to them, and now it's a perfect time to throw in this track, because you need to listen to this, because this is where you're going to learn, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they're even saying stuff like, you know, like Christopher chose to explore, discovered America, and they're like, yeah, right. It's like, so stuff like that, you don't hear that in school or anything, right? It's like we were talking about earlier. It's just like little things like that in tracks like this. You think, what are they talking about? Like Christopher Columbus, so he didn't discover America. So yeah.
I love Mike G's verse, man. Yeah, I cut class, I got a D, because history meant nothing to me except a definitive nap. That's why I often sat in the back. It's just, it makes a lot of fucking sense, right? I mean, when you're teaching some bullshit and you're not teaching the real, I mean, it's so true. I actually had this conversation with my auntie the other day. She's a vice principal of a high school. And we were joking about my grades in high school. And I was just like, you know, the reason why they're so shitty, it's not that I was a dumb fuck. It was simply that school was awful, man. Like, it was, the curriculum was so bad. I'm like, I remember joking about it, or even bringing it up when I was in high school and being like, why the fuck are we doing the same shit that our parents were doing? Like it made no sense. Like we're reading the same materials and shit, and like, and it like recently just they don't even read because everything that that our parents and we were reading, I guess is like it's too much. There's probably something in there to offend somebody, so they took that off. So it has changed now. But I'm like, what the fuck? Like, I mean, this is the 90s, and I'm like, why are we learning about this shit? Like, there's other things, and it used to bore the shit out of me. I'm like, school's bullshit, man. It's bullshit. Like, you learn the basics in elementary, you're good to go. You're good to go.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it is bullshit. I enjoyed history in high school. It was like my favorite subject, but because I mean, you get to learn a lot of stuff like the pyramids and all that shit. It had an interest to me, but
right.
But coming from listening to this stuff, by the time you're a kid, there's a lot of stuff that they're leaving out. They aren't addressing at all. They don't even touch on it, right? So,
dude, I used to get in arguments with people, but I'm like, man, we're learning more from like people, adults and shit. Like, oh, you listen to that rap crap shit. Like that was the big saying back in the day was all that rap crap, right? And I'm like, oh, fuck whatever. I'm like, bro, we're learning more from this shit than your guys are teaching us in this fucking bullshit hellhole. Yeah. I mean, like, really, like I learned more from the History Channel on TV. And the music than I do from fucking school. It's bullshit. So
yeah, it's true, man, it's true.
I became obsessed with, like, I've mentioned this many times before, where I can't do it anymore. I can go pretty far, but I used to know every American president. Like, I could name them all off.
Really?
Oh man, I was like obsessed with like American history and president. I don't know. I was always fascinated by like the Civil War and shit because I'm like, they just fucking fought each other. I'm like, this is crazy. Like, this is fucking nuts. Yeah. And then you realize like what it was about, and then you kind of correlate everything. You're like, holy shit. Cause like in Canada, like we don't have a lot of like crazy history like that. We have, there's certain elements to our history, but it's not as interesting as American history. Like we didn't have civil wars and shit. Like we had fur trading and we have native history and that's it. Like we don't really have a lot, especially like you have more history where you are because it's a lot older. But Canada was built from the east to the west, and where I live, everything, we don't even have old buildings out here. There's no brick.
Yeah, you were mentioning that to me before when you came here. You're like, man, all these old buildings are in the city. It's like we don't have any of this stuff.
It's so cool, dude. Like honestly, everything is just so modern. There's nothing old here. It's such a different world. Like going out there was like, whoa, I love this. It's so cool.
They're trying to make it that way here now. It's like everything. They're trying to build everything up and. But when you were here, there's a lot of construction going on in the downtown area. It's been going on like that for years. So
right.
Eventually, it'll just be all new shit. But...
Yeah, that's kind of a shame, man, because then it just doesn't... I mean, history doesn't change the history, but it definitely changes the look. And you want the look with the history because it adds so much, like... It adds so much flavor, like, even doing, the brewery tour and stuff, and it's just kind of cool, like, how they've... incorporated, like they still have like the old tunnels and shit. Like I love that, man. Like you don't want to ruin that. You don't want to get rid of that shit, man. It's really neat. It's really neat how they do that. So
yeah, hopefully they don't take it too far. So we'll see though.
Right.
You want to try to modernize everything.
Right. I don't really. I mean, I get it, but at the same time, I don't because that's kind of what that brings into tourism. To places like Halifax and stuff, right? It's the oldness. It's great. It's so cool, man, to see that shit. Especially for people where I live, man. Like you just don't get that at all. It's different world, man. Different world. So.
Yep.
So that was acknowledge your own history, which we talked about it too. It's like it's one of those tracks that like the lyrics are just so they're blatant. It's simple and very to the point, and it's very easy to understand, but it's hard to understand. You know what I'm saying? Like it's hard to understand why that songs like this have to be written, because it's just the truth is just not there and stuff. It's crazy. It's really crazy.
Yeah, and earlier in the album, we were talking about where he says about the red, black, and green, and then in this track they break it down what that stands for. Right. It's like red's for the blood, black's for the man, green's for the color that stands for the land. So that right there is like, okay, that solved my problem as to what is red, black, and green. When I was a kid, it's like, oh, okay, now I know what that is in the song here. So
yeah, and it made complete sense too. I mean, you look at the album covers, you see all the colors on there. The green, red, and and the black man and and then when Tribe came out with their logo, it was like, oh shit, like that's crazy,
Yeah.
I mean, they're literally wearing it on their sleeves, kind of thing. So, pretty cool. Yeah. Pretty cool stuff. So next song is Belly Dancing Dinah.
Belly Dancing Dinah.
Or Dinah. Yeah, I guess Dinah.
Yeah,
Dinah, Dinah. Yeah.
And this one has some interesting samples in it as well there. Of course, it pretty much every track does. But.
Yeah, no, this album's great. Yeah, it's got the Funky Worm by Ohio Players in it, which is, dude, like I mean, this is a song that's been sampled a million times, but I'm sure a lot of people had to pay for that one. Yep. Like, it's a pretty big song. It's pretty crazy. Yep. This is basically a song about, you know, the two of them that are kind of infatuated with this belly dancing Dinah. Like, she's all hot and shit, and they're just telling the stories about her, man. It's pretty literal. It's pretty literal.
It's funny. Again, it's quite a contrast from the previous track here, but it's like they're jumping all over the place. They'll hit you with anything at this point. So, yeah, I love Africa's delivery on the first verse, man. It's like he's like his voice and the way he delivers is like so versatile. It seems like he could rap on anything. It doesn't matter what it is.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a funny track.
Yeah, it starts out with a tisket, a tasket, right? I'm wondering what's in... And I love that, man. A tisket, a tasket. I wonder what's in the basket.
Just the way he says it, man. It's so fun. It's perfect.
Oh, man. It's so good. It's so good.
Yeah.
Toot, toot, toot. Pulled out my flute. Yeah, she was so cute.
Oh, it's great.
Oh, man. That shit's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, it's not my favorite track on the album or anything, but it is. It's just a good time. It's just funny, man.
Yeah, it really is, man. It's pretty self-explanatory to what it is, and that leads us into basically the end of side one. If you're listening to the tape of this, with Good News Coming, it's pretty much just a instrumental track.
And it's long too. It's not like a short instrumental track. It's a long one.
They were filling out side one here, is what they were doing. It's like it's got like elements of house music. It's got like African drums. It's got notes of like jazz, and it's got like African chants, and so it's kind of a versatile track. And pretty much what we've been hearing throughout the album, it's got all these elements of all these different genres of music and stuff. And I still think it's strange. I never really understood putting an instrumental track, especially this long. But I mean, if you go back to what you said about, you know, constructing the album based on flipping the tape, you do need something there. Maybe it's kind of like the interlude. It's kind of like, you know, it's like the refreshments commercials at the drive-in, the old Grindhouse and shit like that. Like you needed something there, but this one's really long. It's not like they just, you know, here's a minute and a half drum beat. It's like 5 minutes long.
Yeah, man, it is like you said. I think they were just filling it out, and like they're gonna get their album a full hour here, right? It's like, and this is the first half, so let's just fill it up with this track. You know?
Right. Yeah, it's a little bit strange to me, but I mean, I dig it, but it's like I just want to get back to the record, and it was one of those things too, and like I don't know if it was ever why it played this way, but I remember, you know, flipping this tape and being like, it probably was because it was like back in the day it was like instrumental tracks. I'm like, really, I just want to hear it. I don't want to just hear beats, so I'll flip the tape. Maybe that's why like I really love the second half of this album. Because it starts with the title track of Done by the Forces of Nature, which is funny. Yeah. It even has credited as featuring Tribe Called Quest, and I'm pretty sure they just do ad-libs on the track. So it's kind of interesting how they keep getting credits for ad-lib. You would never see that anymore if someone was just doing like ad-libs or whatever, just having... I mean, it's like the KRS-One's credit on this record. Blastmaster KS1.
Yeah, he's just like on there one line, he's gone.
It's so funny, man. It's so funny. He
still gets the credit, though.
Yeah, Done by the Forces of Nature, man, is a really interesting track, because I always wondered, you know, growing up, what exactly they meant by, like, you know, I mean, the album title is Done by the Forces of Nature. I mean, it kind of makes sense and stuff, but I was always wondering exactly where it came from. So I looked it up. They had like a little bit of a burp of it on Wikipedia, and it says, basically in quotations, those who are diluted by the elusive power Maya of nature becomes attached to the work done by the forces of nature. So it's stemming from. So the album's title may refer to a line from Bravagat. I don't know how to Gita, a Hindu scripture, where then the Krishan says, and then it says, goes into that quote right there. So it's definitely something biblical, right?
Okay, yeah.
and it kind of plays into, done by the force of nature, which is, referring to like the evils that are kind of influencing the nature, it's kind of influencing you, and you're getting done by the forces of nature, right? Which is the natural evils and stuff. So I'm like, oh, that's kind of interesting, because if you look at the album, I guess it kind of makes sense, because it's very Afrocentric, it's Afrocentric. It's it kind of fits into the whole concept of what they're doing too, right? Because it's that whole, it's the reality of things, and it's almost hippie in a sense when you kind of get biblical like that, when you deal with like the forces of nature and stuff like that. And there's a lot of different ways of actually looking at that. I thought it was kind of interesting, but I don't really know exactly how to pronounce what it is. It's like
I'm not sure, so I couldn't even try.
It's a 700 verse Hindu scripture that is part of the epic, and it's like this crazy long word, man. Dated the second half of the first millennium. It's typical of the Hindu synthesis, so it actually comes from that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like a quote written from that scripture. Those who are diluted by the elusive power Maya, which is in quotations, of nature, become attached to the work done by the forces of nature. It's scripture 3:28.
Interesting.
So yeah. Maya is literally illusion or magic, has multiple meanings in Indian philosophies. So it's interesting that it's referring to like Indian context and in Indian scriptures and stuff.
Yeah,
not African.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
No, I just learned that today actually, because I was curious on what they like kind of meant by "done by the forces of nature." Because when you listen to the song, it makes sense, but if you put the this behind it, you're like, oh shit, that actually kind of makes a little bit more sense now.
Yeah. I kind of always took it as being like sort of like the evolution into an adult, whereas like there's all these different forces of like they go through different things that are happening, like forces of nature basically. But right. I just thought it was kind of like sort of influenced in there, and like just evolution basically. But I could be totally wrong with that.
Well, because they almost write this song as a metaphor in a sense. I mean, because they literally do talk about evolution and nature, like evolving and stuff. Like, time changes, time flies, caterpillar turns into butterflies, kitten grows up to the tiger, I grow up to be a rider. Things like that, right? Like, like Baby Bam's first verse is literally all that. Like, born buck naked out my mother's womb, a man cooped up in a rubber room. So, yeah, and it kind of goes right through this whole thing. Mike G's verse is a little bit different. He kind of takes a different approach. He's like, black man, black heart, black soul. I was born to roll like the water in an open stream. Smooth it can be, tick-tock goes the hands of time. Time puts meaning to my rhymes. And he kind of goes off. But I like the way this ends. It's like, there's some science to what I speak. And if there wasn't, what I could not fascia, because it was brung by the forces of nature. See, that's interesting.
Yeah.
That's really interesting how that plays out.
Yeah.
Like, I hate reading things. I can rap it, but I don't have the beat. You know what I'm saying? It's like reading it is so much harder to do. Remember when we used to play the lyric thing and we were like, dude, I can't put the lyrics because you're reading them. It makes no sense, right?
Yeah, it's a lot different for sure.
Yeah, when I don't have like a cappella, it's like if I have the beat, it's a little bit different. But But yeah, no, this song is really interesting when you kind of break it down. So it's easier for a camel to walk through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the gates of heaven.
Yeah.
Right. So that goes into the biblical thing.
Yeah.
Which is, I believe, rich man to enter the gates of heaven. Are they talking about, like, I think that's actually Christian though.
Yeah, I'm not too familiar with a lot of religions and
so maybe
different scriptures and things of that nature.
Yeah,
but
I don't think that they're referring. I don't think it's one specific thing. I think it's just in general, right?
Yeah,
you're getting religious, but yeah, it's kind of it's a very in depth, kind of almost metaphorical song, but not really metaphor. But it's interesting because it's definitely one of the more in depth, kind of deeper songs that they have on the record.
Yeah,
which kind of makes sense. It is the title track to the album, but it does give a totally different vibe. I love the beat on the track. It's really dope.
Yeah, it is. And it's funny as well, like the famous flute comes back in this one as well. Like they introduce Africa in this famous flute.
Oh, right.
And then as well, they have a friggin' saxophone break. It's like, can I get some of that saxophone? And then there's like a sax break, like out of nowhere. It's like just doing little things like this in songs is so unique, man. It's just different. Like you don't hear those type of things in songs.
Right. Yeah, I guess there's like a Jimi Hendrix sample in here. Apparently, Born to Roll by Master Ace actually sampled this track too. I'd have to go back and listen to where the sample is in Born to Roll. Yeah, I know. I was just kind of thinking that I didn't realize that till right now. I looked and I was like, it's sampled in Born to Roll. Shit.
Yeah.
I'd have to go. Maybe it might be a vocal sample or it could be like a vocal sample or something, which a lot of times we get credit for that too. But Done by the Forces of Nature, man. It's a really great track.
Yep.
Good stuff. So, all right. So it's the title track, and then it goes on to Beads on a String, which this is another really great track. I love how they even describe like what the beads on a string are.
Yeah.
it's kind of cool, right? Because my mind back in 1989, which I didn't listen, maybe when I was 10 years, I still wouldn't have made this joke in my mind, but I'm thinking beads on a string. First thing I think of is anal beads, to be honest. You're right. It's just one of those things, like beads on a string.
That's like a two life crew track, anal beads on a string.
Yeah, exactly. Oh man, it's so funny. I was laughing about that today. I was like, man, that dirty ass mind. Fucking, that's exactly what I'm thinking right there. Fucking beads on a string.
Put it out here right now. I've never thought of that ever. Oh, that's funny, man.
Shit, man. Yeah, it's
anal beads on a string. God damn.
Yeah, so the people is the beads and the string is like the beat kind of thing, and it's kind of cool how they break this down, man.
What is it like? The beats are the people, the string is the vibe is what mentally connects the tribe. So
yep.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, man, it's just a whole rhythm. It's literally like check the rhyme, it's like it's kind of cool, man. I like it.
Yeah.
Cool track though. Really, really cool track. It's definitely the second half of this album has a totally different vibe. It really does. Speaking of vibe, it goes into tribe vibe, which I think is interesting. Again, it's before tribe.
It says the big KRS feature on it.
Yeah, it does actually. Yeah, very Afrocentric type track, and it is funny because if you look at the credits, it actually says featuring KRS-One, and he pipes in and he's like, "Yeah, Blastmaster KRS-One," and that's it.
That's literally it. That's it.
Like it's in the fourth verse, and it's kind of like they're throwing out all the shout outs and stuff, and then KRS-One is like he just happened to be there, and he's like, "Yo, brother, give me the mic," and it's like because they're giving shouts like Tribe Called Quest, De La Soul, and shit like that, and like Queen Latifah. Yeah. They even mentioned Ultramagnetic actually, and Public Enemy, but KRS-One is like, bro, you can't just say my name. I gotta say my name myself.
Yeah. Blastmaster KRS-One, the teacher. I'm out.
Yeah, the tribe, y'all.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a good track though for sure. It's like a pretty busy up tempo layered beat.
Right.
Yeah.
And then we get to JB's Coming Through. I like this track.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite tracks for sure.
Yeah, this is definitely one track that always stuck out to me, man. Like I said, there's something about the second half of this record, man. Like, you start with Done by the Forces of Nature, and it's just like, oh, shit. It's different vibes, man, different vibes. But this song is dope, man, because there's like a little bit of an anecdote here. Where does it say? It says Mike G explains in the Mogul podcast how this song is sort of a road call for the band when they were touring through the States, sometimes 10 gigs in one weekend. So I think they were doing like tons and tons of shows, and this is kind of a dedication to like their work ethics and them doing so many shows in so many different places. They're like, the JBs are coming through once again, it's like, so I thought that, and it's literally like when you listen to it, you're just like, it's totally them just rocking the place, man. It's awesome. It's a dope track, man.
Yeah, there's another line in this that's like burned into my brain. I always say it every time. It's when he's at 5,000 booming watts, sound system, state of the art. It's like every time that comes on, man, I have to say it.
Oh, dude, it's so dope, man.
Yeah.
Again, dude, like opening lines from the beginning of the songs that just kind of get totally burnt in your minds, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good shit, man. Yeah, it's such a dope track, such an amazing song. Then we got the next song, track 13, is called Black Woman, which is very self-explanatory. It's, giving props to the black woman, basically. Like, without her, none of us would be here because she's the one that birthed them and stuff. Talking about, like, black woman, mother of my earth, black woman, you gave me birth and stuff like that. And it's, you would expect nothing less from the JBs to do a song like this, right? You know, they got the
they
forces.
always put the black women up on a pedestal, whereas at that time there's a lot of degrading things saying about the black women.
Right.
But I thought the singing in this is really cool too for this type of song, and the way the beat is like, it is one of those thought-provoking type beats. When you hear it, there's got to be something going on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and the singing just lifts it up, I find. So
it's a
really
very
good track.
It's just a very positive, conscious, dedication song to somebody or to everybody that needs to have a song dedicated to him. And it really needed more songs like this. I mean, I was probably the worst person in the world, because I'm the type of person that would make a mixtape back in the day and put this song, right after, Too Short's Invasion of the Flat Booty Bitches or something like that. And like Invasion of Flat Booty Bitches, and then it would be Black Woman. It's like, bro, what are you doing, man? Like, what are you fucking with us right now?
Yeah, exactly.
Ah, shit. No, but for serious though, man, it's a absolutely great song.
Yeah, definitely.
After that is In Days to Come, which is track number 14 on the album. What are your thoughts on this track?
I thought it was interesting the way it kicks off. It has the radio call-in show type of, where the woman, she's talking to her, like, black music is like, it's just like what's popular these days type of thing. But yeah, it's a pretty interesting track.
It is interesting because they get very kind of political in this too, a little bit. It's like, but that was, we touched on this before, and like in that time, people just didn't understand it, right? And it was hard to explain it to them, because at this point in this radio or in this phone call, she's like, she doesn't even know what it's called. She's like, that music, and like, I don't think she says, oh, is there any records of black music these days? Yeah, she does say black music, and they're like, keeps going on, and they're like,
and she's like,
rap music?
What do you call? She's like, what do you call those things? Like,
right, and it's like, you don't even try to understand. You're just like, what the fuck? Like, what is it? Rap music? Oh yeah, shit, And I was like, of course there is. Well, what is it? Shut up.
Yeah.
And then it kicks into the verse, and I like this track, man. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting when they play something like that, because obviously it just shows like it is a newer genre of music, and people, white people listening to it, it's like, oh, is any of those black music things these days? Like, what do you call those things? Like, it's like, come on, man. It's like, you're going to call in a radio show and be that stupid and ignorant?
Right.
It's like,
right.
It's hard to believe, really. It really is hard to believe that somebody would call in on a radio show and say those type of things.
It isn't. This is another interesting one too. Actually, I don't think it even says on the. It says samples Mama used to say, but Junior, by Junior Giscombe. But there's actually there's a Blondie sample in here too. The Rapture sample comes in the outro, and it's like the name of the game is Rapture and stuff like that.
Yeah,
and it's interesting too, because it's like kind of the end of the days type thing, right? It's very biblical again. They kind of go back to the whole biblical references and stuff, and talk about the end of days and shit. And I'm just like, oh shit, it's crazy.
Yeah.
But I mean, there is a lot of I think there is a lot of there is a lot of moments in this track where they do talk about different types of religions. I know Jehovah's brought up in it and stuff, and they do, like, if you break down the whole record, they take things like, I mean, the title of their album is from Hindu scriptures, and they talk about Christian things. They talk about Jehovah, and it's kind of interesting. It's really interesting. There's a lot of religious anecdotes in this track.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, they're going deep in a lot of this stuff, man. It's like, it's not on the surface necessarily. Like it's not, like you said previously, it's not, their lyrics aren't hard to understand.
No.
But there's a lot to learn within the lyrics, right? It's like,
a
lot of things I still don't know to this day. So.
Mm-hmm. All in due time, time will tell. But for now, my record's got to sell. Get the message across, get the music across, get it across without crossing over.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because that was the big thing, man. EPMD did their crossover shit, man.
Yeah.
They set that shit straight.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, you don't really hear about the crossover anymore. That's the goal at this point, pretty much.
I think it's just I think it's so far gone now that, like, you wouldn't even try to tackle that shit, man, because we have like MCs, like most rap artists like that are in the mainstream. If you just saw that person, you would never know. Like when we were growing up, if you saw a dude that was like dressed, all, like a metal head or something like that, you'd like, oh, you probably, he's into metal. Like some of the new cats are like, I have no idea what's going on here. Like, what music you're into, what you're doing. Like, I would never, like, you see some of these guys, I'm just like, bro, what? Like, you don't want,
it's
you
funny.
don't want the parts.
It's funny now, like, it's cool now for, like, hip-hop artists to wear metal shirts and stuff like that, and they don't even know what the band is or anything. They just think it's cool logos and stuff, right? But
oh, man, I've always had a big problem. Like, it's funny when you see, like 9-year-old kids and they're wearing Ramon shirts and stuff, and you're like, really?
It's usually Misfits.
Or Misfits, yeah. It's the Misfits
yeah.
or the Ramones or something like that, yeah.
Yeah,
Fuck.
it's funny.
I was probably... Yeah, I mean, it's fucking bullshit, man. Like, I mean, it's crazy how those things kind of come around and stuff. Like, I mean, I like metal too, right? And I'll rock shirts and shit.
Yeah.
And like I remember I was doing a review one time. I can't remember. I might have even been doing a hip hop video and I was wearing a Death shirt, literally the band Death.
Yeah.
And someone's like, "The fuck? Like, why are you wearing a Death shirt talking this shit?" I'm like, bro, like, music is music, man. Like, it doesn't really matter. Like, I love Death, you know, growing up and stuff. I was probably the only person in the world that was like walking around listening to Del the Funky Homo Sapien wearing an L7 shirt. Like, in the world.
Man, L7, I haven't heard L7 for a long time.
Oh, I loved L7, man. They were one of those bands. They always got me hyped, dude. That was the most kick-ass chick band of all time, dude. They were cool chicks.
Yeah.
They played awesome music, and they were fucking fun, man. They were a fun band. Yeah. They were always having fun.
Yeah.
Oh, I enjoyed them, man. They were great shit. But yeah, I was probably the only person ever Dell in the headphones or Bone Thugs, whatever I was listening to L7 or wearing an L7 shirt.
Yeah. Yeah, but the thing is, like, you would never wear the shirt if you didn't know what it was or like it, though, right? It's like you're representing what you like, whereas now it's like, I'm wearing this because it looks cool, you know? I have no clue what it is, but it looks cool.
Dude, okay, that's the same problem I have with sports fans. Okay, so when I see somebody wearing a Yankees hat, I just assume that they're wearing it for fashion. Because there is a lot of random Yankee fans here and there, but the majority of them are wearing it for fashion shit. And honestly, man, Boston gear's got like that too. I see people wearing Boston gear
more like that
all the time, and I'm like, dude, are you really a Red Sox fan? Like, no, I'm a Jays fan, but you know, I like their shit, and I'm like, bro, it's like sacrilege, man. It's like fucking sacrilege.
It is, man.
You can wear any other shit in the whole major leagues if you're a fan of that player or whatever, but not you. They're a direct fucking, you know, they're just, you can't do Boston, but I do that shit all the time. Like I saw a kid wearing a Lakers hat the other day, and I was like, now he could be a Lakers fan or a LeBron James fan, but I don't know. I feel like it's just like back in the day when everybody rocked Jordan gear.
Yeah.
I don't like the Bulls because they're too popular, but I'll rock some Jordan shit, though. I'm like, that makes no fucking sense. Whatever.
Yeah.
It's like me walking around with this De La Soul shirt. I'm like, I don't know who the fuck De La Soul is, man.
Never heard of them.
Never heard of De La Soul. Stupid.
Yeah, it's a weird mentality for me, man. It's like you're representing something you have no clue what it even is. But
I know. Like, you're gonna spend money on something.
The sports thing is on a different level too, man. It's like, why would you wear a Yankees hat if you like the Jays, or a Red Sox hat if you like the Jays, man? It's like, Jesus.
But it's people too. Like, I'll run into people and they're wearing a sports hat or something, but they're not. They're just fans of the way the hat looked. They don't even like follow the sport. I'm like, that's even worse. You're not even a sports fan, but now you're just rocking the hat. I'm like, because you saw someone else wearing it, and you're like, oh, I like that. How am I gonna wear that shit? I'm like, I'm like, I've never understood that mentality, man. It's like you see somebody wearing some like Tommy Hilfiger shit, and I'm like, yeah, it might look okay. I ain't rocking that shit though, man. You know, just it's like I don't fucking know what the hell that shit is. Like, I don't, you know.
Yeah, it's just confusing to me. I don't understand it.
No, not at all.
No.
But yeah, in Days to Come, another really great track on the record, which leads us into the Posse cut, Doing Our Own Dang.
Yeah.
Which I swear, when I was younger, I could never get this title right. I always wanted to say Doing Our Thing.
Yeah, Doing Our Own Thing.
Yeah, like it kind of reads like that. But this is cool, man, because this is like a straight up native tongue song. It's got actually voices. Like all De La Soul members have voices in this, and Moni Love, Queen Latifah, Tribe Called Quest. Well, actually, I guess Fife isn't on the track, but
no. Yeah, it's weird. Moni Love was on this. I always thought that was strange, but
well, Moni Love, she was also on Buddy too, right?
Yeah.
So she was, she did her thing. But Moni Love was British.
Yeah.
She was English. Yeah. And Queen Latifah is actually an interesting cat for this time because Queen Latifah was part of like the Flava unit, and she was also considered like a native tongue. Like she was part of like two crews. And if you're not familiar with the Flava unit was, they were basically it was a bunch of people that were from New Jersey. And everybody knows my fucking thoughts on Jersey hip hop, man. I love New Jersey hip hop. There's so much good shit out there. So, and I know Jay's not really probably a big fan of Moni Love or Queen Latifah, but I actually really liked Queen Latifah back in the day. I don't know what the fuck, man. Like Queen Latifah does like singing. She does like R&B albums now and shit.
Really?
She did like 4 albums in the 90s, and then I know her later stuff in the 2000s when she became a big actress and stuff. And good for her, man, because she's actually pretty legitly good. But she did like some R&B albums. I think she's put out like 2 or 3. She sings now. She fucking sings. It's crazy.
I had no clue.
Yeah, it's crazy. So, but I love this. I'm a big fan of Posse tracks. I've always loved Posse tracks. It's like I remember back in the day, like I would always make mixes of like Posse tracks, just straight up Posse track mixes, and it's cool, man, because you get so many MCs on them. Like you could have a mixtape with like 12 or 14 songs and it'd be like 100 MCs on it. It's like amazing. It was amazing. So so I've always been a big fan of Posse cuts, and this it's really good, man. Do you like this one more, or do you like Buddy or like Scenario? Like how would you go on those?
I would probably go Scenario, Buddy, and then this track.
Yeah, those are probably the big 3 native tongue ones that they had done. There might be 1 or 2 more, but those are like the big ones. But yeah, Scenario, and then this one, then Buddy. And Buddy's like probably I wouldn't say Scenario probably is, but Buddy is a pretty big song, man. That shit was played everywhere.
Oh yeah,
Rap City, MTV. It was like even on. I think Buddy was even on like the MTV. No, it was the MTV Raps mixtapes that they put out and shit. I think Buddy was on there. Like the songs that were on. If you were making the MTV Rap compilation album, your track was fucking big. That was a big track. So, but yeah, do your own dang. I still can't even say it properly. Posse cut. It's it's bars over beats, man. That's what it is. It's cool, man. Like Q-Tip actually gets like a full verse.
Track.
It's a fun track. Yeah, and Queen Latifah only does the chorus and she doesn't rap, so Jay's probably like, woohoo! No rapping.
Yeah, exactly.
Which leads us into the last track on the album, which I always thought was so strange, and I never understood this song growing up because I had no idea what the hell they were doing until I was older. And I'm like, oh, they're doing like a spoken word, like jazz blues joint, like in the realm of blues, and I'm like, this is fucking cool, man. And it's literally about cooling off, like chilling and shit. It's fucking cool, man. I love this track.
It is.
It's kind of it's a fun way of not doing like your typical outro, but doing something like this for the album as an outro, right? But it's like a full song though. It's kind of cool, man. I like it.
Yeah, and the delivery is kind of like you said, like a blues type of song, right? It's like, I got plenty of moves, eyes open or closed, but my best move, baby, is when I blow my nose. So it's like,
yeah,
it's just funny stuff, right?
Oh man, laying up on the island, buck naked, hanging loose. Yeah, shame on you. A large cold wooden bowl of freshly squeezed orange juice.
Yeah.
Can I get a sip? Like the fucking ad-libs in there are so good, man.
Yeah. It is just a fun way to close the album, right? So
it really is.
It's short. It's only a couple minutes long.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
it's good stuff.
Man. Good stuff.
Yeah.
All right. So, what are your 3 tracks? I'll let you know if I have any of them right, which I feel like I might. I don't know. I just don't.
I'm thinking you have to have one of these. I'm pretty sure. I'm going to go with Beyond This World. No reaction. Feeling All Right.
Nope.
No reaction. And JB's Coming Through.
Yes, JB's Coming Through.
All right, cool. Got one at least.
Yeah. So are yours? I got Beyond This World.
Is that yours?
No, this is for you.
Guessing?
I'm guessing yours.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. You should get that one.
So Beyond This World, Beads on a String.
No.
And JB's Coming Through.
Okay. Yeah.
So
all right, so you got two of the three that I wanted. The other one was Feeling All Right, the one that I liked.
Oh wow, crazy. So yeah, my three tracks are Done by the Forces of Nature, Doing Our Own Dang, and JB's Coming Through.
Oh wow.
Okay. I thought maybe you might consider Beads on a String because of the amazing sample that's in the track, man, from Black Sabbath. And it's crazy, like that the drums are just taken right from that track. And like it's so crazy because I had heard this for so many years before I'd ever heard that. Because it was funny because my introduction to Black Sabbath was like, I'm not even joking. Well, I knew like Paranoid and stuff as a kid, like you heard those songs and stuff, but I'd never really listened to Black Sabbath albums, and it was kind of like an album cut, right? And so like I'd hear Black Sabbath here and there and stuff, and my cousin was actually more of like a Dio Sabbath fan. So then I heard a lot more Dio Sabbath. And so one day, you know, I was getting into Black Sabbath, bought some Black Sabbath. I was like, you got to be fucking kidding me. I'm listening to this album going, what the, that's the fucking Jungle Brothers sampled that. It's the fucking breakdown. I was like, that's insane. Yeah. And I was just like mind blown. I was like, that's so cool. And it's literally so cool. I just thought maybe that, you know, that might just apply because I know, I think you like Black Sabbath, but
I was like you though, man. I never listened to Sabbath like at all when I was a kid. Like basically musically, rap was like the first music that I loved as a kid. Right. And then after that, I started getting into stuff that's similar, like Chili Peppers and Rage Against the Machine, stuff like that. And then after that, I started getting into a lot more heavy stuff because I actually started playing bass and I was in bands and stuff. And friends that I knew that I was going to parties with or whatever, they love Black Sabbath, so I started listening to it. And it's the same sort of situation as you, man. It's like, what? It's like, you don't recognize when you hear songs like just listening to albums and you recognize the samples and you had no clue it was in there previously. It's so funny.
Right. I know that's like, I've talked about this before with people, and it's like, there's nothing cooler than hearing a sample. Like, I mean, you've been hearing the sample in a song for years and years, and then all of a sudden you discover the original song. You're like, that's where the fuck it's from.
Yeah, like, and it's like for us, it's in reverse because people that are aware of those songs, like if they know that a lot of these are in rap songs and they hear it and they're like, oh, that's from that song. But we're the reverse. We're like, oh shit, that was in Jungle Brothers. The Jungle Brothers sampled it from this album.
Right.
It's totally reverse for us
because you understand the sampling process, but then you're like, but it was still like hip hop was not that old at this time, right? So when we were sampling and shit, like, you know, and we were young too, chances are we weren't listening to like the Ohio Players and stuff and Sabbath like at those times, like we just didn't. So it came later. So we'd heard a lot of these sounds and, you know, samples and things like that have been pulled from these tracks, and all of a sudden you're listening to the original song one day and you're like, no fucking way. Like I've had this happen to me so many times. I'm like, oh yeah, I would like, you know, you've been somewhere and you hear a song come on the radio and you're like, shit, bro, like that's the original song. Yeah, that's a cool feeling, man. That's a really cool feeling. But
and now sometimes, like if you listen to pop radio, like you can hear samples that came from rap songs. Now it's funny. Yeah, it's like a redo of a rap beat. So,
especially after like the sampling got to the point where it was like, well, we can't really do this too much more, and people started like creating their own shit and like, you know, creating their own samples and whatever and stuff. And then because like, holy shit, that's so original. I'm gonna just go and sample that. It became the reverse. It's pretty cool stuff. Yeah. Which is very common now. Very common. Like you don't sample heavy music nowadays. Even though there is like, there's literally sites and there's places you can go to now which they have like a whole shit ton of samples that you can actually use. You sign up for like these sites and you can use the samples. You don't have to like clear them through the it's like a totally different process now. I'm like, that's crazy. That's how sampling's become. Like these guys basically, you know, obviously got paid to allow their shit to be up on there, and like, well, you pay a fee and then we'll just, you know, do whatever. That's fucking nuts, dude. It's the craziest shit I've ever seen. Yeah, I think I can't remember who was posting about that. It was like The Alchemist or some producer like mentioned it. I was like, what? And like there's like 100,000 samples, like there's tons of samples on here and like crazy. So you can just pay a monthly fee and then just start making beats. I'm like, that's like, wow. Like talk about not having to actually dig anymore.
Oh man. Yeah, digging's like there's definitely no need to do that anymore.
Right. So crazy. It's
like you can just go on YouTube and sample stuff off of there. Like everything's done. Well, I mean, a lot of guys still use the old equipment, but you definitely don't have to.
No, you really don't.
A lot easier.
No, I mean, when I'm sampling for when I'm doing the podcast or just taking shit out, like I'll just rip audios and stuff and I'll just chop it up. Right.
Yeah.
This is the way to chop. I mean, you can find literally almost everything. Sometimes I can't find like certain trailers because I'm reviewing some crazy ass movies or whatever. But, I can usually find something that I can incorporate into somewhere in the show. So just, rip it and chop it, man. Simple. So rating.
The rating.
What do you want to, what do you give this one?
I'm giving this one a 9.
I'm going to come in at 9.5. I think this album is incredible. The only thing that always has thrown me off, and it does every time I listen to it, is I find myself skipping the instrumental track.
Yeah.
I really do. And it's not that I'm not against it. It's just because I know what's after it. Right? Yeah. And like I always say, like, it was the end track on the first side of the tape. And then I knew, like, Done by the Forces Nature was coming up, beats on the string. And like, it just, the whole second half is just, like, it's incredible to me. It's like, I like to listen to that, and then, I don't know, man. It was just that moment, nostalgic thing. But at the same time, even doing it nowadays, I'm like re-listen to the album a bunch. Like, I didn't need to keep hearing the instrumental track. So I would, like, literally skip it and then just get to Done by the Forces. And then I'm like, yeah, it's good enough.
Yeah, I usually listen to a bit of it, and then I'll be like, all right, it's time to skip this. Because you said it does go on. It's like almost 5 minutes long, so you don't want to sit there and listen to the instrumental for 5 minutes every time.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, it's long.
Yeah.
All right.
But yeah, definitely a classic album, though, in my books.
Yeah, it definitely is, man. It's very, very unique. It just kind of... It set the bar really high, man. It really did. Like, they incorporated so much uniqueness into this record. I mean... it's kind of funny. People that don't really have appreciation for music and production and stuff that would listen to this album and they're like, whatever. Heard a lot of this stuff before. I'm like, yeah, but it was 89, bro. Like, you just don't understand the complexity of this record, man. Like, it's really crazy. And even in 2022, it still holds up so well.
Yeah, it does. I think it does, definitely.
Yeah. And I think that's really what counts. I mean, good music, man. It doesn't matter when it's from. It's just, good music is good music. So,
exactly.
But, all right. Well, that is going to conclude episode 7. Holy shit, I think this one... Wow, this has gone on a pretty long time for one album. It's a good thing we didn't have a second one.
Yeah, this is a long album. We got off on a lot of tangents as well, talking about different things.
Right.
It was fun. It was fun, though.
That's going to happen when you're dealing with stuff like this, though. So,
yeah,
good.
Definitely.
But yeah, that's going to, again, conclude episode 7 here on the Bake Sale. Hope you guys enjoyed. Leave comments down below. Give the video a like if you want to. And yeah, I guess we'll be back soon with probably in a couple weeks with episode 8. We still got to figure out what we're going to do, but we'll be doing something. And hope to see you guys then. All right. Deuces.
Peace.